The pulpit stands empty. 15,000 seats, once filled with believers, now gather dust in the abandoned sanctuary of New Hope International Ministry. This is where faith died. This is where trust was betrayed on a scale the world had never seen. What if the person you trusted most with your soul was actually stealing your future? 300,000 families destroyed. $20 billion vanished. One man disappeared without a trace. Right now, somewhere in the world, a man is living in luxury with $20 billion of stolen money. He's sipping champagne on a yacht, sleeping in silk sheets, enjoying a life built on the shattered dreams of those who believed in him. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you'd risk everything for them? Your life savings? Your children's education fund? Your retirement? What if that person was your spiritual leader? The man who baptized your children? Who prayed with you through your darkest hours? Who promised that God would multiply your blessings if you just had enough faith? This is the story of the greatest religious fraud in modern history. A con so brilliant, so perfectly executed, that even now, 5 years later, law enforcement agencies across 47 countries still can't find the mastermind behind it. Pastor Ezekiel Matthews didn't just steal money. He stole hope. He weaponized faith itself. And the most terrifying part? He's still out there, still free, possibly planning his next move. If this story disturbs you as much as it should, hit that like button to help others discover the truth about religious financial fraud. Because what you're about to learn might just save someone you love from becoming the next victim. 1992. A cramped garage in suburban Dallas. Folding chairs arranged in tight rows. This is where it all began. Ezekiel Matthews wasn't always a pastor. Just 7 years earlier, he was selling insurance policies door to door, struggling to make his monthly quotas. His wife Rebecca balanced the checkbook at their kitchen table, counting every penny while their twin daughters, Grace and Faith, played on the worn carpet. Then came what Matthews called his Damascus moment. At age 35, he claimed God spoke to him directly during a particularly bad sales month. The message? Leave insurance behind. Start a ministry. Become a vessel for divine prosperity. 20 people attended that first garage meeting. By week 3, they'd squeezed in 40. Rebecca managed the donations. A coffee can pass hand to hand. Within months, they needed a bigger space. The abandoned warehouse on Martin Luther King Boulevard wasn't much to look at. Broken windows. Graffiti-covered walls. But Matthews saw potential. More importantly, he saw opportunity. God doesn't call the qualified, he'd tell his growing congregation. He qualifies the called. 2,000 people filled that warehouse church by 1997. Matthews had discovered his gift, not for insurance sales, but for selling hope. His sermons weren't just inspiring, they were theatrical productions. Rebecca evolved too. No longer just counting coins, she became the ministry's financial architect. While Ezekiel dazzled from the pulpit, Rebecca built the business infrastructure behind the curtain. 2005 marked the turning point. Matthews introduced what he called God's economic system, the Covenant Investment Program. The concept was elegant in its simplicity. Your money isn't just money. It's seed. Plant it in holy ground, and watch God multiply your harvest. Minimum investment, just $1,000. Returns, supernatural, Matthews promised. Margaret Thompson, a retired teacher, invested her entire pension. Pastor Matthews laid hands on my check. I felt something, like electricity. I knew God was going to bless me. Similar stories poured in. A construction worker who invested his daughter's college fund. A widow who mortgaged her paid-off home. They all shared the same conviction. This wasn't gambling. This was faith in action. Dr. Marcus Johnson, who later investigated the case, identified the genius of Matthews' approach. Traditional Ponzi schemes promise money. Matthews promised something far more powerful: divine intervention. When you believe God himself is guaranteeing your returns, what skepticism can survive? The early miracles were carefully manufactured. Matthews would single out specific investors during services, announcing their returns had supernaturally multiplied. These chosen few, always long-time members, always fiercely loyal, would testify tearfully about their windfall. What the congregation didn't know. These testimonies were orchestrated. The blessed investors received payments from new investor funds. Classic Ponzi mechanics wrapped the language of faith. By 2007, the Covenant Investment Program had collected $50 million. Matthews' sermons grew bolder. His suits grew more expensive. The garage prayer meetings felt like ancient history. But here's what nobody saw coming. The man who started in a garage wasn't satisfied with millions. He wanted billions. And he was about to build an empire that would span continents, destroy hundreds of thousands of lives, and create the most sophisticated religious fraud the world had ever witnessed. The seeds of deception had been planted. Now they were about to bloom into something monstrous. By 2010, Ezekiel Matthews had a problem most con artists dream of: too much success. The Dallas operation was generating millions monthly, but Matthews knew the real money lay beyond American borders. His target? The developing world. Places where regulation was loose, faith ran deep, and people desperate for financial miracles wouldn't ask hard questions. Matthews created 3 interconnected entities. Divine Wealth Management, registered in the Cayman Islands Kingdom Financial Services, based in Luxembourg. Blessing Bridge International, incorporated in Panama. This wasn't random. Each jurisdiction was chosen for its banking secrecy laws. Money flowed between these entities in a choreographed dance that would confuse even seasoned investigators. To legitimize the operation, Matthews needed credibility. Enter Thomas Crawford, Harvard MBA, former Goldman Sachs vice president, and devoted Christian. When Matthews offered him the CFO position at Kingdom Financial Services, Crawford saw it as God's calling. "I thought I was joining a revolutionary Christian financial movement," Crawford later testified. The sophisticated structure, the investment portfolios, the humanitarian projects, it all looked legitimate. Better than legitimate. It looked blessed. Crawford wasn't alone. Matthews recruited an army of financial professionals, lawyers, and accountants. Most were church members who genuinely believed they were part of something holy. They created convincing investment reports, glossy promotional materials, and detailed financial statements, all documenting investments that didn't exist. The theatrical investor ceremonies became Matthews' signature. Held in luxury hotels across the globe, these events featured a professional stage lighting and sound, a orchestra playing worship music, a Matthews in flowing white robes, a blessing certificates printed on gold-embossed paper, a public anointings of investment checks. Investors would line up, checks in hand, while Matthews prayed over their money. Cameras captured every emotional moment. These videos became powerful recruiting tools. But the most effective marketing came from the testimonies. Matthews hired struggling actors through third-party agencies, never revealing the true nature of their roles. These performers traveled with his entourage, sharing scripted stories of miraculous returns. "My $5,000 investment became $500,000 in 6 months, one actor would proclaim, tears streaming. The audience would erupt in hallelujahs. Real investors, seeing these testimonies, would mortgage homes and empty retirement accounts. Matthews' global expansion followed a precise pattern. 1. Partner with local churches. 2. Conduct prosperity crusades. 3. Share testimonies of American investors. 4. Introduce the Covenant Investment Program. 5. Collect money and disappear for 6 to 8 months. 6. Return with select success stories. 7. Trigger massive second-wave investments. Nigeria alone generated 300,000 investors. Brazil added another 200,000. The Philippines and South Korea combined for 150,000 more. These weren't just numbers. They were families, communities, entire congregations betting their futures on Matthews' promises. Maria Santos worked double shifts at a textile factory in Sao Paulo. A widow raising 3 children, she'd saved for 15 years to buy a small house. Then Matthews came to her church. He spoke about God's desire to lift his people from poverty, Maria recalled. He showed videos, people like me becoming millionaires through faith. The pastor I'd trusted for 20 years stood beside him, endorsing every word. Maria mortgaged her home. $50,000, her entire life's work, went into the Covenant investment program. I thought I was planting seeds for my children's future, she whispered. Instead, I destroyed it. The money flowed through the three-company structure like water through a maze. Divine Wealth Management would receive investments, transfer portions to Kingdom Financial Services for management fees, then route funds through Blessing Bridge International for humanitarian projects. In reality, 70% went directly to Matthews' personal accounts. Another 20% paid earlier investors to maintain the illusion. The remaining 10% funded the elaborate ceremonies and marketing machine. By 2018, the operation had collected $15 billion across 15 countries. Matthews owned properties on every continent except Antarctica. His daughters attended Switzerland's most exclusive boarding schools. Rebecca's jewelry collection rivaled European royalty. But Matthews wanted more. He pushed into new territories: India, Indonesia, Kenya. The machine demanded constant growth, fresh money to pay earlier investors and fund an increasingly lavish lifestyle. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. You might just save them from a similar fate. Time was running out. The pyramid was growing too tall, too visible. Financial journalists were asking questions. Regulatory bodies were taking notice. The empire built on faith was about to face its day of reckoning. In 2015, the Securities and Exchange Commission opened a preliminary investigation into the Covenant investment program. They hit an immediate wall, not legal, but spiritual. Your investment will be blessed according to your faith. God will multiply your seed in His perfect timing. Trust not in man's wisdom, but in divine providence. These weren't investment guarantees. They were sermons. And in America, religious speech enjoys powerful protection. Matthews' legal team, led by constitutional lawyer Robert Sterling, argued brilliantly. Pastor Matthews makes no specific financial promises. He shares his faith that God rewards the faithful. Prosecuting him would violate the First Amendment. The government cannot regulate religious belief. The SEC faced an impossible choice: appear to attack religious freedom, or let a potential fraud continue unchecked. Dr. Patricia Williams, a Yale psychologist who studied the case, explained the genius of Matthews' approach. Traditional fraud relies on greed. Religious fraud exploits something far more powerful: the need to belong, to be chosen, to matter to God. When someone questions the investment, they're not just doubting a financial scheme. They're questioning their own faith. Think about it. Have you ever stayed silent about doubts because speaking up might make you look faithless, weak, unspiritual? Matthews weaponized this psychology. Doubters weren't just skeptics, they were lacking faith. Public questioning was giving voice to the devil. Financial losses were tests from God or spiritual attacks from Satan. The miracle return strategy was particularly brilliant. Matthews would identify investors experiencing financial hardship, medical bills, job loss, foreclosure threats. During packed services, he'd call them forward, pray dramatically, then announce God had moved upon his heart to bless them immediately. These chosen few received payments of 10 to 20 times their investment. Always in public. Always with tears and celebration. What happened next was predictable. Other investors, seeing these miracles, would double down. Those experiencing losses assumed they simply lacked sufficient faith. The solution: invest more. Pray harder. Silence doubts. Here's a shocking statistic. According to the FBI, religious affinity fraud causes over $2 billion in losses annually. Yet less than 15% of victims ever report the crime. Why? Shame. Embarrassment. Fear of appearing foolish. But mostly, victims blame themselves, not the perpetrator. I thought God was testing me, one victim explained. When I lost everything, I believed it was because I hadn't given enough, hadn't trusted enough. I was failing the test. Another added, everyone in my church was investing. To question Pastor Matthews was to question our entire community's judgment. It would have made me an outcast. Matthews' inner circle actively suppressed dissent. Church security labeled skeptics as divisive spirits and removed them from services. Email filters blocked messages containing words like investigation, FBI, or fraud. Phone calls from concerned investors went unreturned. Former staff member Linda Rodriguez revealed, "We had scripts for handling doubters. First, pray with them. Second, share testimonies of others who overcame doubt and were blessed. Third, suggest they fast and seek God's direction. Fourth, if they persisted, quietly exclude them from church activities." Traditional Ponzi schemes collapse within 2 to 3 years. Matthews operated for 14 years. Traditional schemes face constant scrutiny. Matthews enjoyed religious protection. Traditional victims report crimes quickly. Matthews' victims protected their abuser. The international element added another layer of protection. Different laws, languages, and legal systems made coordination between authorities nearly impossible. By the time one country began investigating, Matthews had moved operations elsewhere. Ask yourself, if your spiritual leader, the person who married you, baptized your children, comforted you through loss, if that person presented an investment opportunity wrapped in scripture and prayer, would you see the red flags? Or would faith blind you to the danger? The FBI reports that religious affinity fraud has increased 400% in the past decade. Scammers have discovered the perfect crime: wrap financial exploitation in spiritual language, and victims will protect you themselves. Matthews didn't invent this playbook. He perfected it. And by the time authorities understood his methods, it was already too late. The clock was ticking toward the inevitable collapse. But Matthews had one more card to play: the greatest vanishing act in criminal history. March 2019. A phone call changed everything. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what I know about Kingdom Financial Services. And what I can prove. The whistleblower, an accountant deep within Matthews' operation, had reached a breaking point. Watching elderly investors lose their life savings while Matthews bought another Lamborghini finally shattered their silence. The evidence was overwhelming. Spreadsheets showing money flows, internal emails discussing redistribution strategies, recordings of Matthews instructing staff to destroy documents. The FBI had their smoking gun. What they uncovered shocked even seasoned financial crime investigators. 17 luxury properties across 5 continents. A $45 million Beverly Hills mansion. A Swiss ski chalets worth $30 million. A private islands in the Caribbean. A penthouses overlooking Central Park. A Scottish castle dating to the 13th century. The transportation collection defied comprehension. 5 private jets, including a customized Boeing 777. 47 luxury vehicles worth over $50 million. A rare Ferrari collection. 3 yachts, the largest stretching 300 feet. While investors lost homes, Matthews' twin daughters attended Institut La Rosie, the world's most expensive boarding school at $150,000 per year. Rebecca's jewelry collection, seized during the investigation, included pieces once owned by European royalty. Federal agents planned simultaneous raids for August 15, 2019. Search warrants for all properties. Asset freezes across 30 banks. Arrest warrants for Matthews and 12 key associates. But someone leaked the plan. August 14, 2019, 11:47 p.m. Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Security cameras captured Matthews entering Terminal D. Gone were the designer suits and gold watches. He wore faded jeans, a Texas Rangers baseball cap, and carried a simple backpack. He looked like any other late-night traveler. Here's where the mystery deepens. Matthews entered the airport but never boarded any flight. Security footage shows him walking toward Gate 23. Then, nothing. He vanished between cameras, as if he knew exactly where the blind spots were. Airport police found his abandoned rental car in short-term parking. Inside, his wallet, passport, and cell phone, all deliberate misdirection. The next morning, as federal agents stormed empty properties, Matthews was already gone. The FBI discovered he'd been planning this moment for months. Rebecca Matthews' reaction stunned investigators. Within 24 hours, she filed for divorce, claiming complete ignorance of her husband's crimes. Her lawyer painted her as another victim, a betrayed wife who'd trusted too much. "I thought we were building God's kingdom," she told reporters, tears flowing. "I never imagined. I never knew." Grace and Faith Matthews took to social media with coordinated statements. "We disown our father completely. His actions betray everything we were taught to believe. We stand with his victims and pray for justice." The family's swift distancing felt rehearsed, calculated. Had they known this day would come? As investigators traced the money, they discovered the horrifying scope. Of the $20 billion collected, only $600 million, just 3%, had been legitimately invested. The rest had vanished into a labyrinth of offshore accounts, cryptocurrency wallets, and shell corporations. The human cost emerged in devastating detail. Retirees living in their cars. Families torn apart by financial stress. 3 confirmed suicides linked to investment losses. "He didn't just take our money," sobbed one victim. "He took our faith." How do you trust again after something like this? Somewhere in the world, Ezekiel Matthews had begun his new life. The man who'd preached about treasure in heaven had secured his fortune on earth. The hunt was about to begin. But Matthews had a $2 billion head start and a plan years in the making. Matthews didn't just disappear. He executed a vanishing act worthy of a spy novel. Investigators discovered he'd been moving money into cryptocurrency since 2017. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero, digital assets that could cross borders invisibly. Using a network of crypto exchanges and mixing services, he converted nearly $2 billion into untraceable digital wealth. The escape plan's sophistication stunned authorities. Matthews had acquired legitimate passports from 3 countries. A Dominica, through citizenship by investment. A Street Kitts and Nevis, economic citizenship program. A Malta, golden passport scheme. Each identity was complete: birth certificates, driver's licenses, credit histories. He'd spent millions creating entirely new personas, legally. Former FBI agent Robert Anderson revealed, "We believe Matthews underwent extensive cosmetic surgery in the months before his disappearance. Facial reconstruction, dental work, even fingerprint alteration. The technology exists, and he had the resources." Theories about his location multiplied. Thailand. Several witnesses reported seeing a man matching his altered description in Bangkok's expat community. Argentina. A luxury yacht purchased with cryptocurrency was registered to one of his known aliases. Montenegro. Banking connections suggested property purchases along the Adriatic coast. Dubai. A city known for harboring wealthy fugitives, where questions aren't asked if your money is good. Interpol issued a red notice. The FBI offered $10 million for information leading to his capture, one of the largest bounties in financial crime history. Private investigators hired by victim groups added another $5 million. Yet Matthews remained free. Why can't they catch him? The answer lies in jurisdiction gaps, corruption, and Matthews' meticulous planning. Some countries don't extradite for financial crimes. Others can be persuaded to look the other way. "Money opens doors," explained international law enforcement expert Dr. Simon Cross. "With $2 billion, you can buy protection, silence, even new lives." Matthews isn't just hiding. He's likely living openly under another identity, protected by the very systems meant to catch him. Intelligence suggests Matthews maintains contact with a small inner circle through encrypted channels. Occasional cryptocurrency movements hint at an active lifestyle: property purchases, business investments, even charitable donations to maintain his carefully crafted new identity. But here's the most terrifying part. Matthews created a blueprint. His methods, the religious shield, international structure, cryptocurrency escape route, have been studied and replicated. Right now, similar schemes operate in dozens of countries, run by people who learned from Matthews' success. He didn't just steal $20 billion. He showed others how to do it. Could he be in your country? Living next door under an assumed name? Running legitimate businesses with stolen billions? Comment below where you think Ezekiel Matthews is hiding today. 5 years have passed. The trail grows colder each day. But for the hundreds of thousands who lost everything, the hunt continues. Justice delayed isn't always justice denied. Sometimes it just takes time to catch up with a ghost. The New Hope International Ministry stands abandoned. Weeds grow through cracks in the parking lot. The massive sanctuary that once held 15,000 believers now echoes with silence. This building is just one casualty. Across 15 countries, 47 churches closed their doors. Congregations that invested building funds found themselves homeless. Communities built on faith crumbled overnight. The human toll defies comprehension. Margaret Wilson, 73, lost her husband's life insurance payout, money meant to sustain her through retirement. She now lives with her daughter, dependent on Social Security. Robert and Linda Chen invested their twins' college funds. Both children dropped out, taking minimum wage jobs to help their parents avoid foreclosure. 3 elderly investors took their own lives within weeks of the collapse. Their families found suicide notes expressing shame over losing their children's inheritance. The Matthews blueprint spreads like a virus. In the past 5 years, a pastor in Kenya collected $40 million using identical methods. A Brazilian prosperity churches adapted the covenant investment model. An Indonesian religious leader vanished with $100 million in cryptocurrency. Dr. Patricia Williams, who continues studying religious fraud, warns, economic uncertainty makes people more vulnerable, not less. When traditional systems fail, people seek divine intervention. Fraudsters know this. Current estimates suggest religious investment fraud has tripled since Matthews' disappearance. His success story, steal billions, live free, inspires a new generation of spiritual predators. How do you protect yourself? Watch for these warning signs. 1. Investments wrapped in religious language. 2. Pressure to act in faith without documentation. 3. Returns promised through divine multiplication. 4. Testimonies that seem too perfect, too emotional. 5. Leaders living lavishly while preaching sacrifice. 6. Discouragement of questions labeled as doubt or lack of faith. 7. Investment structures impossible to understand. 8. Offshore entities and complex money movements. Victim support groups emerged worldwide. They share a common message: it's not your fault. You weren't stupid. You were targeted by a master manipulator who weaponized your deepest beliefs. Recovery takes years. Some rebuild financially. Others never recover their faith. That empty pulpit in Dallas serves as a monument, not to faith, but to betrayal. Yet it also stands as a warning. In the space where Matthews once preached prosperity, silence now speaks truth. Trust, but verify. Faith doesn't require abandoning wisdom. God's blessings don't come through Ponzi schemes. The Matthews case taught us that anyone can be a victim. Intelligence doesn't protect you. Education doesn't shield you. When someone exploits your deepest beliefs, your faith, your hope, your desire to belong, rational thinking takes a back seat. But from devastation comes wisdom. Former victims now educate others. Regulatory bodies developed new frameworks for religious investments. Churches implemented financial transparency requirements. The ghost of Ezekiel Matthews still haunts the faithful. But his legacy isn't just theft and betrayal. It's also awakening to the dangers of blind trust and the importance of protecting both faith and finances. The empty pulpit remains empty, but the lessons it teaches could save countless others from similar fates. Somewhere tonight, Ezekiel Matthews sleeps peacefully on stolen millions while his victims struggle to rebuild their lives. This story isn't just about one man's greed, it's about our vulnerability when faith meets deception. Ask yourself, if someone you trusted completely offered you a divine opportunity tomorrow, would you see the warning signs? Your answer could save your future. Subscribe to True Crime Case Notes for more stories that could save your financial future. Hit the notification bell because our next case might be happening in your own backyard. Stay vigilant. Stay informed. Stay protected.